when I talked about the Seahawks last year going into the 2022 season, I, like many others, were expecting them to go into full rebuild mode. In the 2022 offseason, they went on to trade Russell Wilson, their longtime starting quarterback, who won them a Super Bowl, to the Denver Broncos. And you were looking at a quarterback situation where you pretty much had Geno Smith. He was like this backup quarterback who didn't really turn out for the New York Jets, and now he's just pretty much everywhere. He was on another team in the Seahawks, and he was competing for the starting spot with Drew Lock, who was one of the victims in the Russell Wilson and Broncos trade. So they were pretty much in this situation. It's like, well, let's look forward to the NFL draft, shall we? That is pretty much that situation with Seattle. However, as it came to the actual season itself, they defied many expectations when Geno Smith had himself a revival season of sorts, leading the team to a surprise playoff berth. He in that offense played surprisingly well. He had a couple of spurts where he didn't do that great late in the season, but nonetheless, they finished the season 9-8. They got the 7th seed. Thanks not only thanks to themselves, but thanks to some help from the Lions. But they eventually fell to the 49ers in the first round of the playoffs. But nonetheless, a pretty successful season, one that surpassed expectations by many. And Geno Smith won Comeback Player of the Year. So you can't really fault Seattle for being that successful in 2022. So obviously going into 2023, the standard is now even higher for Seattle to succeed, to prove that they are no fluke. So for Seattle, your goal is to try to win the NFC West with Geno Smith. Try to be even better. Try to surpass the 49ers as the top team in the division. So will they do that? We'll see. Let's talk about it. So some of your offseason priorities, if you're Seattle going for this season, was to get some major help in the defensive line, because the run defense was terrible. It was awful. They had such a hard time stopping the run that so many running backs were able to just gash them with ease. Just look at Josh Jacobs, for example, in that overtime game between them, the Raiders, and the Seahawks, which was basically the deciding factor in that overtime loss to the Raiders. And then the Week 13 game against the 49ers. Christian McCaffrey, and I also think Elijah Mitchell or whoever was the running back, but they were able to gash the Seahawks run defense with ease. They had to get some major help in the defensive line to plug some holes in their run defense. And, get some better protection for Geno Smith too, because, it was a little decent, a little bit better than what Russell Wilson had, but it could definitely use some improvement. So looking at some of their moves throughout the offseason, obviously the biggest one was re-signing Geno Smith. Now, it wasn't like a big mega deal, but it was one that, let's keep him around for a little bit and see if he can be the guy. So, Seattle was kind of protecting his own ass a little bit of a slight overpay, but not too much that, he's getting like Jalen Hurts money or Patrick Mahomes money or all that, So it was like a 3-year, like $100 million deal, I think, but, not like a massive overpay. They also re-signed Drew Lock. Yes, they need a backup quarterback. Some of the people that they lost, they didn't really lose too many people that's notable anyway. So I think I noted that in my season recap. So you didn't really lose too many people notable. You lost Ryan Neal to the Tampa Bay Bucks. I mean, he was kind of a liability in that Seahawks defense anyway. And running back Rashad Penny to the Philadelphia Eagles. He did pretty well for them until he got hurt 5 games in. But Kenneth Walker stepped up to the plate after he got hurt. So good luck to him in Philadelphia. Some of the pieces that they add in free agency include, thanks to the Rams being stupid as hell, they managed to get Bobby Wagner back in Seattle. Now, how will he do here in the second go around? We'll see. But they did manage to get him back and be a contributor yet again for that Seahawks defense. They also got safety Julian Love from the New York Giants. He was solid in that Giants defense that would frequently get torched. But he was one gem in that Giants defense. Linebacker Devin Bush from the Pittsburgh Steelers. You know, it didn't really turn out that well for Pittsburgh. So maybe he turns it around here in Seattle. Defensive tackle Draymond Jones from the Denver Broncos. Now, I don't have really else much to say about Draymond Jones. Like, I don't have any comments at all, but hopefully he pans out well. Hopefully gives them that, that wall that Seattle needs for their run defense. Looking at some of their draft picks, corner Devin Witherspoon from Illinois. A good pick for them because they definitely need some help in the secondary, especially in that that corner spot. So, the more corners, the better for them. And then this pick is definitely interesting for them. Receiver Jackson Smith Nijiba. I'm sorry if I don't pronounce that well, but from Ohio State. So adding another receiver alongside DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, and maybe he could be the successor, the man that surpasses Lockett whenever he retires. Like, I mean, come on, Lockett's not getting that younger. But nonetheless, excuse me, Smith Neva could be a definite weapon. It could be a good third option for now for Geno Smith, as long as Geno Smith, of course, plays well too. They also got an edge rusher by the name of Derek Hall, so he could definitely be helpful too in the pass rush. And another running back by the name of Zach Charbonnet, so maybe a backup behind Kenneth Walker. So for Seattle this offseason, they did a pretty nice job addressing the defense. They got all these people in, so it should definitely help their pass rushing situation. Now the run defense, we'll see how that plays out for them. For the offense, like I said, it could be a deadly quartet. Like I said, Jackson Smith, if he can play to his potential, he looks like a good vertical threat alongside DK Metcalf and Lockett. Holy heck, if Geno Smith plays well, then teams should be careful with that. And my other takeaway is, it was a little surprising for Seattle not to use one of its pick on a quarterback, but maybe they wait till next year. But a little surprising there. Looking at some of their potential key games in 2023, obviously it's in week 2 against the Detroit Lions on the road. You get to see how that fares for them in their first road test. And then perhaps a big test in week 5 on the road against Cincinnati. Joe Burrow and that offense, see how that defense handles Joe Burrow. So it's going to be interesting how the defense is going to be able to pressure them up. And then week 12 versus the 49ers at home on Thanksgiving. It's a big division rivalry game on prime time. And then week 15 against the Philadelphia Eagles. So it's at home, and you're going up against the NFC champions. So yeah, the pressure should be on not just both of them, but especially to the home team by that point. And who knows what kind of spot they'll be in by that point. It'll be competing for a playoff spot, or maybe for the division, or just trying to stay alive by that point. Some of your biggest questions for Seattle going into 2023, obviously the biggest one being is that can Geno Smith prove that 2022 wasn't just an aberration? Was it not a fluke? So for Geno Smith, there's plenty to prove going to 2023. The front office gave you all the support. They gave you a big fat new contract, kinda. But no, seriously, they gave you a little bit of help on the offensive line. They gave you a new third receiver. So now it's time for you to go and prove that 2022 was no joke, that you can be at least a viable starter for the next however many couple of years until they can find your successor. So Geno Smith has to prove that last year was no fluke, that he can still be their starter for the next few years. And then obviously, like I said before, can these offseason additions translate to on-field success, especially on the defensive side? Because, Seattle sometimes makes these good moves, but they don't always translate well when it comes to the actual product. So who knows? Who knows how it turns out? So for Seattle, like I said, last year was no joke. Neither was their offseason. They made a good amount of quality moves, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Had a solid free agency, had an even better draft that gave them much needed depth on both sides of the ball. The biggest question is going to be how Geno Smith and the team handles what is going to be a much tougher schedule this year, and how those depth pieces, how those moves will pay off on the field, especially considering now teams have film on what Geno Smith did. Now that they can key in on his biggest weaknesses. So it'll be not on just Geno Smith, but on Pete Carroll to assure that they can navigate through that, have Pete Carroll, play up to his biggest strengths. So it's going to be, I don't know if I can say about the Seattle Seahawks. Maybe a bit of the same, more of the same this year for Seattle. Maybe 9-8, the exact same record that they got. But teams are definitely going to figure out Seattle. So it's going to be on Seattle to adjust, make those adjustments, and ride the wave, and hopefully try to make that playoff spot again.